One of the questions I had was around how you think about time and that, not all time is created equal. Are there certain habits that you encourage for people, for organizations on how to think about when things should happen?
Well, what I mean by time isn't equal, like say, let's go back to that $100,000 a year salary example we used earlier in the conversation. If you assume 2,000 hours of work a year, that's a $50 an hour person. If you then look at your calendar, it's not that every hour slot on your calendar is a $50 an hour time slot. It could be that Monday at 9 a.m., after you've had a relaxing weekend and your brain is fresh, you've worked out, had your coffee or your kombucha or whatever you do. Maybe you're firing at full cylinders and your brain is at full horsepower. Maybe that's worth $500 an hour to you, what you can solve in that time slot, versus 7 o'clock on a Friday after a long week and you've had 100 Zoom calls that week and don't have Wi-Fi or your laptop. Maybe your time isn't worth $50 an hour. Maybe it's worth $10 an hour to you at that point. And so it's important to think of your calendar not just as, every slot's worth the same, but it's more like this heat map where different slots have different values. And so now let's apply this thinking to meetings, right? Which is one of the biggest inefficiencies and cost drains in companies. I think you know this better than me, but I think I read an article that just in the US alone last year, $35 billion of productivity loss happened due to inefficient meetings. And the funny thing is a lot of the meetings that they were having were about how to be more efficient. So meetings are one of the biggest time sucks and productivity. They can be great and transformative. And I say all this because you really have to be aware what actually needs to be in a meeting versus could be done, outside of a live meeting. Anytime you're asking a group of people, 2, 3, 5, whatever, to meet at a certain time, there's a cost. And it's not just the cost of all the back and forth to find that time, but you might be, if you're trying to schedule a call with me at 9 a.m. on a Monday, I'm giving you prime time. Like you're not asking for $50 an hour, you're asking for $500 an hour, right? And so if there's any part of that meeting that didn't need to be live, that could have been done asynchronous. So anything that's a report out, for example, someone's sharing the monthly numbers of social media and they're sharing their screen and they're just talking at you for, call it 15 minutes and showing you these graphs and reports. That's great. That's very valuable information, but that could have been pre-recorded, sent to me in, say, an Asana task to watch it on a Friday. And now that Friday back of the Uber car ride, I can watch that 15-minute Loom video, maybe even at 1.5 or 2x speed. Now I've made use of that time. I've just done a time shift, if you see. I've now turned that Uber ride into productive time where I was doing nothing before. And I've transferred 15 minutes out of a very valuable time slot. In that 15 minutes, if you're valuing that slot at $500 an hour, that's $125 an hour, $125 value savings if that's the way you're thinking about it. And one meeting, it's not going to make or break you, but every week you have dozens of meetings. So if you start really auditing your meetings, does this need to be live? Is there any element of a report out where someone's just talking at you that could be shifted to a written or Loom video and we can decrease the length of that meeting? That's a huge win. So every meeting you need to be auditing. Does it need to have this many people? Does it need to be this long? Does it need to occur this often? And does the meeting need to even happen at all? A lot of things don't even need to be meetings. They could purely be done asynchronously. But if in the end you do have a meeting and it's the right number of people and the right length, you definitely want to have an agenda so that you accomplish what you need to accomplish on there. So that another thing with agendas, just to plug Fellow, for example, the importance of it, so much noise that is happening in communication tools like Slack or text, they're happening because your brain is for having ideas, not holding ideas. And people need to dump what they're thinking. And if they don't have a better place to dump, like Fellow, they dump it wherever they can. But if you think about it, a lot of what you're dumping doesn't need to distract someone right then in that moment. It could probably wait till, 90% of these things could wait till next week's meeting. And so we have a policy, if it's not urgent and it can wait till next week and we have a meeting, stick it in Fellow, stick it in the agenda so that you're not distracting people in these tools. Because as you know, if you ever read Cal Newport's Deep Work, every distraction, if you're in a flow state, every ping or ding takes you like 15 minutes to get back into that flow state. So if you can avoid those pings and dings, that's great. And having an agenda tool is a really, really great strategy to give people places to dump things so they don't need to distract all their colleagues.